Fast forward, you come our channel, you so I see AGH Politics Avenue. Podcast or training because make headlines. And your Jimre na ADB Esmo, need me a home braximo. I now subscribe to the channel, Eddie Amami. Now, you're quitting Sima. I don't pay any breaky the mount, a year ongoing trial, a year Kwabna Adu-Boahene, the lawyer, H.Court, Chelsea, wa file a year motion be and think a motion motion and ka omonhwe nka omonka ho asem but court ebo tuguye we na no pay break e de ma ho na me na o kasa yi yebobo ransom nim abra a legal practitioner attract na o boy nchiremu dintia ma court so itiki sa decision I say AGH Politics Avenue but that's why demre e wo ha yenko yinsimu.
Well, welcome back. Let's go to court now. We understand that the trial involving the former National Signal Bureau boss, Adu-Boahene, Angela J.Boateng, and Advantage Solutions Limited has taken a turn. The third accused person, Mildred Donko, has been released from prosecution after agreeing to testify for the state. The state is seeking to prove allegations that the former National Signals Bureau boss unlawfully diverted about $7 million in state funds meant for a cybersecurity project into private accounts for personal gain. We understand that the case is in the High Court this morning. Kweku Asante is in court for us and brings us live updates from the court. Kweku, what more can you tell us about this case?
Well, my message, so two things have happened this morning. First, there was an application by lawyers for Adu-Boahene to the court to stay proceedings, that's in put the trial on hold, because they were going to the Court of Appeal to appeal a prior decision of the High Court which prevented them from accessing certain disclosure materials. And so they wanted the trial to be put on hold. The judge said that application was meritless and threw it out. And so that application to pause the proceedings has not been dismissed, one. And then the second thing, major thing that has also happened in court has to do with the decision of the Attorney General to discharge or withdraw charges against Mildred Donko, the third accused person in this trial. We know that Mildred Donko has now become a state prosecution witness and will now testify against Adu-Boahene. Although prior to yesterday, all of them have been put before the court for the criminal charges that have been leveled against them. And so today, the Deputy Attorney General, Justice Shamsai, who represented the AG in court today, formally announced that decision to the court. But Samuel Atatian had an objection. His view was that the decision to withdraw the charges ought to have come by way of motion so that the court will make a determination on it. But the court reasoned that it is the prerogative and the discretion of the Attorney General to decide who to prosecute and who not to prosecute. And so when it comes to that, it is just a notice that is required and not a motion that will require the decision of the court. So this morning, two applications or two objections raised by lawyers for Adu-Boahene, Samuel Atatian, all of them have been shut down and the proceedings are expected to continue. The court has just taken a recess for some documents to be properly laid out and then the trial will continue.
Well, Kweku, also the former executive director of the National Service Authority, Mr. Osei, and his deputy, Mrs. Gifty Onwari Mensah, are supposed to appear in the High Court today. Have you heard what's the latest on that?
Well, yes, we know that this week the AG preferred charges against both the Director General of the NSC at the time, Mr. Osei and his deputy, for causing financial loss to the state for stealing, among others. We understand the cases will be called in the criminal court today, but in the afternoon, later today, perhaps between 1 and 2 p.m. As we speak, those two persons have not arrived in court as we speak. But the AG and his team are already here, obviously because they are handling another matter in another court. But as soon as this trial gets to an end for today, the Attorney General and his men and women will move to the criminal division of the High Court, where today the charges will be formally read to the former NSA boss and his deputy. We expect them to plead guilty, and then the bail conditions will be set. If they meet the bail conditions, they'll be released. If they do not meet it, they will stay in custody. The court will then also set a date for case management conference before the trial will start.
Right, Kweku Asante giving us updates from the courts. You're still watching Johnny's desk.
Enclave. So he's been able to cover about 6 constituencies now, moving on to the 7th now. So he's somewhere in the Kintampo enclave as we speak. The message is being very well received, which personally to me, as I always say, is not too much of a surprise, but it's always refreshing to know that the delegates are still strongly behind His Excellency.
You're not worried about fear delegates?
Well, of course, it's a delegates election, and that word fear delegates is not to be looked at lightly. But you also cannot discount the kind of bonds that are built over time. Yeah. And when people genuinely believe in your capabilities as a leader to lead them. And one thing that I think people also forget is that His Excellency Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia has been leader of the party, or in essence, flag bearer since 2023. And when you are flag bearer or you are in that position, it means you work with everybody, because the delegates are essentially the party machinery. So these are people that have been working with him, campaigning with him over time, and they know and can testify the best to his capabilities and his character. So in this case, we are not too worried about fear delegates, but of course human beings will be human beings, and that's why we are not taking this lightly or showing any complacency. We are still going to reach every constituency in this country and engage with them and remind them as to why the journey that was started in 2023 is not complete, the need for them to continue to unite behind His Excellency Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia till we eventually get to our goal.
Okay. There's this recent move I've seen which says Dr. Bawumia is battling you're battling, internal forces and then external forces.
Yes.
He's been loud on social media for a couple of days.
Yes.
I mean, how are you dealing with that pressure of knowing that, one, you need to work or deal with external factors and then internal ones as well?
Yeah, I think that was sort of expected, and I think it's interesting that other people have begun to take notice, because primarily as an opposition party, our job is to be very vigilant and keep the government on its toes. That should be our primary responsibility. But we're at a point in our lives where we also have essentially an election to fight for our very existence. So yes, it's become sort of a two-front battle that we are fighting, trying to keep the NDC on their toes so they don't take the people of Ghana for granted, as they've begun to do in certain sectors, and again to try and hold on for the heart and the sanity of the MPP. So it's been an interesting journey, but I think we've been able to display that we are quite capable of getting both sides of the job done.
If you look at the Daily Gist on page 3, it says the internal politics of the MPP has turned combative as leading presidential aspirant Kennedy Ohinejapon and Dr. Brian Achampon have launched scathing criticisms at the former Vice President and 2024 presidential candidate, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, over what they describe as his, quote, premature and costly concession, unquote, to the then opposition National Democratic Congress.
Yes, I saw this making the rounds a couple of days ago, and I think it's quite unfortunate that the campaign is going down this line. It seems to me like the other aspirants mostly, if it's not to blame His Excellency Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia for the election defeat on the back of a government that they were all part of. So I'm sure if we won the 2024 election, every one of these aspirants would have come out to mention their contribution and how they helped for us to win the election. But now that we've lost, there seems to be a very deliberate attempt to put everything onto the person of His Excellency Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. And to me, I've always maintained that action just shows that he's the one to beat, that, it's still him, and they are all aware that the spirit of the MPP is still solidly behind him. So what do they have left to do? There's a lack of messaging and all of that. So all they have left to do is to constantly attack things he's done in his persona. But to pick this to attack, I mean, I was quite surprised. We were all here and we saw the reaction from the Ghanaian people when His Excellency Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia decided to put the peace of the nation ahead of whatever might have happened on election day. And so for that to now be tried to span into some negative, it's quite funny for me because it's not even sinking. I saw a flyer on social media and I just decided to go and read the comments when one of the aspirants made reference to that. Because the Ghanaian people had made their voices heard to us. By midnight on election day, from our own internal coalitions, we were aware where the election had gone, that we had lost by a large margin. And so the only thing left was to ensure that all the parliamentary candidates had been able to put their pink sheets together and all those collations were done so that he could then concede. Because if we all remember, it was around that time that the National Communications Officer of the NDC had issued a press conference to say that people should amass at the polling centers. I don't know if you remember that incident. So if you were there through the heat of election day, you understand why certain decisions were made and why it was made to maintain the peace and harmony of this country and nothing else. And to say that it was done in sort of a reckless way to cost us seats is simply not true. All of these things were taken into consideration. We were sure that the presidential was gone. We waited till most of the seats were at a point where you have enough information to dispute, even if there's an issue like happened. I think there was an outstanding of about 9 constituencies before His Excellency conceded defeat, and we made sure that what is required to be able to make a case in those constituencies, we had it, which was the pink sheets and all of that. And there was a lot of uncertainty. The atmosphere on that day was very charged. We all saw how the NDC went into this election and how they planned to go into that election. There was a lot of chaos. There was heightened tension, and it was at that point that I think His Excellency Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia showed to a lot of Ghanaians that he has the cool head to be able to handle a country such as Ghana. Because when you want to be president, it's no mean task. It's not, you are not a minister in charge of a small sector or a CEO in charge of something small. You are the father of the country, not just for those who voted for you or just MPP people. You are a father for NDC, you are a father for people who are not even politically inclined. You are supposed to be able to handle all of those people together and manage the country. So if you cannot even separate recklessness and courage on such an eventful day, such as an election day, when you are very sure that you've already lost, then I think it also comes into something that Ghanaians should look at, because this issue has presented two approaches to a very delicate issue. We are in this country and we've seen a lot of violence happen on election day. People have lost their lives due to this kind of election violence. And after we come and sit on TV and discuss these issues and try to come up with ways to prevent it in the future. So if a leader at a point where he is supposed to be the most pained because he has invested so much toward the whole country, there are times where you don't even get up to 4 hours of sleep when you're on a campaign tour. And after all of that, you lose. I think it would have been hardest for him to decide to be obstinate and say that I'm not going to concede, we are going to fight this out. But that would have spilled out onto the streets. It would have given other people an opportunity to take advantage of that to cause mayhem. So if he decides to say at that point, let's put the peace of this country ahead. After all, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. So if this one is gone, we can always reorganize, show Ghanaians who we truly are and how we intend to help them and move on, and we'll be able to come to them again. But if you allow the country to burn and there's nothing to come back to, I don't see how that is being pushed as some kind of a courageous or a brave move. I'm quite happy that it's not even sinking with the people of Ghana. They don't see that as brave. You've already lost, you know you've lost. So whether you concede or not, how is that something that is used as political capital?
Are you surprised at the way the campaign is going so far for all of the aspirants and some of the things that they're advancing in terms of their campaign message? Beyond what they want to do for the party and for the country, they're also launching some attacks on the vice president that, well, he caused the losing in 2024. But are you not coming along in a way because of the way the vice president himself campaigned in 2024, using the famous Fasti Anamame, suggesting that I didn't have the opportunity to do what I wanted to do, so give me the opportunity to now, have the firm grip of the country. And in other breath, he takes the credit for the other things, digitalization and all of that. It almost looked as though he was cherry picking.
Okay, so I think that's a very interesting question. I was hoping that we would leave this. I was hoping to have like maybe 2 hours so that we can actually discuss this, because I think that becomes one of the sticking points all the time. But it's important for us to be honest and have a frank conversation about this. We all know what the role of a vice president is. If we want to be frank, we want to be very honest. Now that President Mahama is getting a lot of flack about Galamsey and whatnot. You don't even see them say John Mahama Jinnana government. But His Excellency, the former Vice President, when he was in opposition and a running mate, took a very leading part in the MPP's campaign to be able to come into power in 2016. So sometimes it's understandable that a lot more expectation is placed on him than other vice presidents. And when a government is formed, it requires a lot of people. It takes about 6,000, 7,000 people to form a government. Everybody's given a responsibility. And with that responsibility, for instance, some of the contenders were in charge of ministries, say Agric, education. Would it be wrong for a former minister of education or a former minister of Agric to say that, oh, with regards to STEM or with regards to free SHS, this is what I did to make sure that the MPP government's policy was properly executed? It's not like he's taking credit solely for himself, but he has, I think he has earned the right to point out that if he was directly in charge of this, this is how I did that. And so if you are trying to measure my capability as a person in the government, you can then use that. In the same vein, the former vice president as the number 2 of the land, there are things that he directly sought to or directly ensured was done. And in those things, if we point it out, that, you know, with the issuance of the Ghana card, and a lot of people were around, the media was around, it was well covered, and we saw how he took center stage, he took control of that to ensure that that was done. So I don't think it's fair if we deny him the ability to be able to let us know the things that his boss, the president, allowed him to directly get involved in when he was in government to do. And there are things like the fertilizer issue that happened. You see, that was definitely under the remit of a different ministry. So if we want to have a frank conversation, we can do that. But I think it's very important that we point out that there's collective responsibility for all of us. And that has become my problem with the other aspirants.
But for a political party, you usually, I mean, you said the government, you always hear that the Akuffo-led government, the John Mahama-led government. But when it comes to a political party, you hardly hear the Akuffo-led NPP party. And so the political party, I like to think, thought that, well, it's supposed to be one for the team.
Yes.
If something didn't go well,
if you look at it, MFI, if you look at all the other aspirants, it seems to be only one candidate who seems to be taking all the flack of the party and the government.
Yeah, and my question really is that, isn't it because he didn't take one for the team?
How?
In 2024, in his campaign messages, the moment you are reminding the people of Ghana what your real role is per the Constitution and what the president then allowed you to do, then of course, then it will look like you're not taking one for the team.
No. So let me just settle that. There's always been collective responsibility. You know, there are even certain times where there's a meeting, there's a cabinet meeting. It's not everybody that will agree to something. But once it has been agreed at cabinet level, and that's the direction of the government, everybody takes collective responsibility. And I don't think His Excellency has run away from that at all. He's always been a firm believer in taking collective responsibility of everything that happened in the Akuffo-Addo government, whether good or bad, because he was an integral part of it. So that's never been the case. So it was even on the back of that some of the party people feeling left behind and neglected, he took that opportunity and that responsibility to apologize for them. I don't think most of them had a problem with him directly, or the sources of their displeasure with whatever the government did or what the party did to other party members was directly done by him. But he saw it necessary as a leader to take responsibility for everything and then apologize for where things didn't go right for the party people. So I think for him, no, actually, it's been the reverse. All the other candidates seem to rather want to push everything that they find to have been a problem with the MPP administration at his doorstep because he was the former vice president, while trying to stylishly remove themselves from whatever might have caused the defeat. But the truth is, if we want to sit here and analyze everything that happened in 2024 leading up to the election, most of the aspirants will have their own, a nice share of the cake of whatever led into the defeats. And I think it's been discussed over and over, and so I wouldn't want to use your precious airtime again to go into that. But it seems that seems to be the only campaign message coming out of the other camps, like I said in the beginning. Their only issue is that you went for an election, you lost, it's your fault. When they were all part of the same government, if that's the logic. And I think I've already sat here several times to make the point that one election defeat should never be considered as a reason to essentially write someone off when it comes to an election, because our history and even the world's history has proven that that is not the best way to judge someone. And we cannot forget to continue making this point clear. His Excellency was the former Vice President. We haven't seen his presidency yet. The president would have the opportunity to appoint everybody.
They say something.
We and some of the team calls watch and so mamma so Jim Reda, and so body in the Addo-Boahene. It was about room near some of Sokra.